What is up, guys? Welcome back to the first video of the 2025 calendar. I just want to say thank you. We're going to hang out for a little bit in this video and kind of just share some thoughts on the 2024 season. We'll talk NFL playoffs and kind of just hang out for a little bit. I apologize for not making any Week 18 content video-wise. I had been traveling Christmas and then New Year's. We had a couple places to be. So I took the week off. I hate Week 18. I hope you guys do not play fantasy football in Week 18. That's one of the worst ways to decide your fantasy championship. So I hope everybody had a fantastic 2024 fantasy football season. We're going to talk about a few things in here. I can talk about what to expect from me over the coming months. I'm still going to be putting out weekly content for members for sure. We're going to have some rankings and some things. So I was waiting for Week 18 to end. I did put out my updated dynasty rankings. So if you guys are interested, checking out the fantasyfellowship.com, those dynasty rankings are fresh. I'm going to keep doing an update once a month. And of course, when we get closer to the NFL draft, we'll start putting out a bunch of NFL draft content. I'm basically, as far as my NFL draft content, I'm waiting for the bowl games to finish up. We have a couple games left here of the college playoff. And from there, I'm going to probably put out a bunch of my rookie guide stuff. And last year we did this by putting out a huge PDF of just stats and data and a bunch of analysis and things like that. So it was a huge PDF last year. That's going to be starting pretty soon for me. I'm also going to put together, I'm going to basically make a huge data guide based on 2024. So I did this last year as well, the 2023 advanced data study, looking at a bunch of advanced metrics and things like that. And we'll start that study up here soon. So a lot of off-season content coming your way. We'll start putting out, I'm going to probably start putting out some rookie rankings soon, kind of some pre-draft, rookie rankings. Dynasty rankings are already out. And I'm going to put out some weekly rankings for fantasy football throughout the playoffs. So if you guys want to check those out, a lot of stuff coming. And hey, good evening to Aiden. Happy New Year, man. I don't know, man. The Jags are an interesting team. We do need a young offensive mind that can help Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr., man. He's gonna be an attractive player to want to coach, as well as Trevor Lawrence. So the Jags do have a few offensive pieces that I think are going to hire a good coach. And who knows? We'll see if they can get Ben Johnson or not. I'm still not sold on it, but so far 5 head coaching vacancies open. The Jags might be one of the best spots, I think. They got a future QB locked in. They got Brian Thomas Jr. They got a couple other pieces that I like there on both sides of the ball. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. But I did want to kind of talk about I don't know, man. I just kind of want to just open it up and just look at the 2024 fantasy season. And a lot of the numbers are going to get skewed here because of Week 18. But I'll go ahead and give you guys my fantasy MVPs from each position. I mean, it's got to be Lamar Jackson. He was the QB1 pretty much all season long. Joe Burrow, even though he threw a ton of touchdowns and had some awesome games, Lamar just with that rushing upside, throwing 41 touchdowns, adding 915 yards on the ground. Lamar Jackson would be my quarterback choice. But the best value quarterbacks, man, you got Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels. These guys both kind of came out of nowhere. We were drafting Jaden Daniels in the back end of our redraft leagues here, but we weren't drafting Baker Mayfield. So Baker, definitely the sleeper award. I think Bo Nix, another guy that probably was undrafted and got added throughout the regular season. As far as running back MVPs, if I just go to full PPR here, I know Jahmyr Gibbs, he was like the fantasy playoffs MVP. And I think I'm going to leave him be like the overall fantasy playoff MVP because his end of the year was just insane. And if you did play Week 18, you probably won your championship. But 28, 25, 26 from Jahmyr Gibbs during weeks 15, 16, and 17, he was the playoff MVP. But the running back MVP's got to be Saquon Barkley. He had a fantastic year, 2,000 rushing yards. I think everything here for Saquon Barkley lines up MVP running back. Best value running back? I don't know, because all these guys were high-end picks. Chase Brown, a lot of people were drafting Chase Brown as a sleeper, and it just took a little bit for him to get dialed in. So I think he would be my sleeper because he was must play once Zach Moss went down. And then shout out Bucky Irving, shout out Chuba Hubbard, some value running backs there. And then this one's pretty easy. The wide receiver here that just destroyed fantasy football this year was Jamar Chase. And what's frustrating is every year I want to draft Jamar Chase. This was one of the first years that I didn't get him in any of my redraft leagues. So I was a little bit disappointed that I missed out on the career year. He just made so much money with this season. but almost 100 points higher than the next receiver, Justin Jefferson, 17 touchdowns. If you had Jamar Chase, there's a good chance you won your fantasy football league this year. So he's the unquestioned MVP receiver. And then the sleeper, man, it's ultimately Brian Thomas Jr., who, I don't know. I drafted him in the 8th or 9th round in a lot of redraft leagues, and I ended up with a bunch of him in Dynasty as well. And he was the wide receiver one, I think, the last few games over the last maybe month or so of football. So BTJ was the ultimate sleeper. And then shout out Jackson Smith-Njigba having a top 10 fantasy season here for Seattle. And then if you need a tight end MVP, I mean, it's hard not to say Brock Bowers. I do really like Trey McBride as well as the potential fantasy MVP. He just didn't score his touchdowns until the final 2 weekends of the year. So we're going to go Brock Bowers, and he also qualifies as the sleeper. So if you had Brock Bowers, there's a good chance you won your fantasy football league or at least made it really, really far. So I like Brock Bowers, man. He's an exciting talent. So that's just kind of like a 2024 awards recap here. I was going to pull up my projections from 2024, like back in August and whatnot, and just kind of look at some of the things that I had right or wrong. I mean, I had Lamar Jackson at QB4. I had Joe Burrow QB6. Those were the two hot QBs this year. The one that I really got wrong, I mean, and I was low on CJ Stroud. A lot of people had him as a top 5 QB. So I feel like I was low here. I didn't get a lot of CJ Stroud on my teams at all. But Anthony Richardson was the one issue here. I did have Jaden Daniels ranked as a top 10 QB. So I was very interested in Jaden Daniels. But Baker Mayfield, man, I kind of whiffed on Baker Mayfield, just giving him an average ranking of QB 17. I mean, Jared Goff up there as well. But my big miss was Anthony Richardson. Not really any big hits, I would say. A little bit high on Jordan Love. Maybe Jaden Daniels would be qualifying as my best hit because I had him ranked as a top 10 QB. But quarterbacks, those are the easiest ones to project. Really, injuries kind of break those guys down. So we'll kind of skip quarterbacks here. If we look at the running backs, though, I mean, I still had Christian McCaffrey as the running back one, but we're not even going to talk about that because that was just a rug pull from the beginning of the football season. I ended up having Breece Hall RB2. Just the bottom completely fell out of the Jets. I don't think anybody saw them being as bad as they were. And the fact that, Breece Hall, still a really good player, just couldn't overcome the stench of the Aaron Rodgers-led offense. And Breece Hall, man, let's see where he ended up finishing. RB16, that's a pretty bad miss. But I think most people were excited about him. So I don't feel too bad about him. But if you did take him with one of your first overall picks, you did feel bad. The guys you wanted were right here, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. If you took those guys in the first round, you probably made it to the finals and probably won your fantasy league. So those two guys I got right. Completely whiffed on Travis Etienne. I did not see Tank Bigsby being as big of a part of the offense as he was. I had Tank Bigsby hardly getting anything. He's down here with 85 carries and 15 catches. Just no workload that I could envision for Tank Bigsby, but they were high on him in this preseason, and I should have listened a little bit more. So I completely whiffed on Travis Etienne. That's one of my bad ones. But JT, Achane, James Cook, a little low on Saquon Barkley. I had him at RB9, and I had his touchdowns down pretty low here, down at 8 touchdowns. He ended up with 13 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns. So I even though I had him ranked as a top 10 running back, still a little too low on Saquon Barkley. I should have had him easily over Travis Etienne. He probably should have been here at RB5. So that's a bad one here. It looked like Pacheco was going to be a potential like a top 10 running back before he got hurt. And then he just couldn't really regain his starting job with the plethora of backs they have there. I was pretty high on Kenneth Walker, which feels pretty good. Kamara was a tough one to rank because we know he's getting up there in age. We knew the Saints were going to stink, but man, if you had Kamara for the first 2 months of fantasy football, you were in pretty good shape. Pretty bad look here. Javonte Williams, RB13. I gave him all their touches, and they just kept using 3-4 backs per game. Look at my low ranking on Derrick Henry. So I didn't have him. I mean, I had his rushing numbers looking pretty good, just not as good as they ended up. And then his workload in the passing game was kind of non-existent. But for PPR settings, Henry's going to be hard to get up there in rankings. Any other crazy spots here? I mean, James Conner, David Montgomery were pretty good seasons this year. So a few bad misses. I did get a lot of Chuba Hubbard, though, on my team. So that one ended up being pretty good. I did have a lot of Chase Brown on my teams, too, as well. So I usually hit my sleeper running backs with a couple bad misses at the running back position. Let's take a peek at the wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson. I moved Jamar Chase all the way down to wide receiver 9, and this was before his contract extension. So in hindsight, maybe we don't really care too much about the contract extensions because they're going to get done anyways. CeeDee Lamb got his, Jamar Chase reported before week 1, and that's pretty much the reason why I downgraded him. Otherwise, he probably would have been in that wide receiver 3-4 range. I was very high on Garrett Wilson, who was looking like a top 5 receiver before Davante Adams got there, and he just couldn't really overcome Davante Adams' presence there, and just Aaron Rodgers and the offense just kind of cratered. But overall, like the top 10 or so look like good names, a little bit low on Jamar Chase. I was high on Olave, but obviously the concussions derailed his season. Marvin Harrison here ranked at wide receiver 12, Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 17. Where is Mr. Thomas Jr.? I had BTJ at wide receiver 49, which, is a pretty decent ranking back in August for a rookie receiver that we weren't quite sure about. I did have Christian Kirk ranked fairly high as well at wide receiver 30. So, projecting both those guys on the field together, I think might be a little bit different for next year, but we're still going to like Brian Thomas Jr. I did have, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice. I had Chris Godwin ranked highly more than other people back in August. But nothing too crazy here. I think receivers is probably my favorite. It's probably my best spot that I can predict and project. So I usually like getting receivers early and kind of going from there. And then we'll look at tight ends real quick. I think my biggest issue is going to be Brock Bowers was too low. I had him at tight end 11. I had George Kittle at tight end 10. Only gave these guys a few touchdowns. That was my biggest issue here. Kyle Pitts, man, that was my biggest miss. And we probably just have to put Kyle Pitts on ice for a while. We're going to let him burn us. Someday he's going to come back and have a great season, and I'm fine with that. I'm not going to have Kyle Pitts on my team, but it does look like he's going to be a guy that we don't trust. He's not a top 10 tight end anymore. He's not a top 12 tight end anymore. But I was too low on Kittle and Brock Bowers. I was pretty high on Taysom Hill, which we had been starting before his injury. And then Luke Musgrave, man, just completely getting the rug pull. Tucker Kraft completely hopped Luke Musgrave. So that one hurt. Missed on him pretty good. I was projecting some numbers here for Jonnu Smith. So he was the guy that I was able to pick up in free agency and used him pretty well. Otherwise, back towards the top, Dalton Kincaid, man, is he a top 10 tight end? I don't really know anymore. Tight ends are a crapshoot. I almost don't want to invest in one early anymore. But I think Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, and Brock Bowers, those are going to be the 3 tight ends that everyone's going to want next year. Whether it's in the 3rd, 4th round. Brock Bowers might be a 2nd round pick in fantasy next year. So we'll see how those guys shake out. But if you can't get one early, you're going to wait and you're going to pick up the waiver wire guy. So I'll do a more in-depth look and review of, the projections and things that I learned. But for now, still kind of digesting some things and trying to see what went wrong. I'm going to pivot to best ball real quick and just kind of show you guys my returns from the best ball fantasy season. I played a lot of money on drafters. I played DraftKings and Underdog. I played a lot on drafters this year. I had this much money in play, only deposited that much though through bonuses and other tickets and things. I got a lot of freebies. Ended up with a 5% return on drafters, which, hey, that's better than your savings account. So overall, it was a profitable drafters season. But a few of the big misses that I had, Deontay Johnson was one of my most drafted players, and it was looking good for a little bit with Carolina and Andy Dalton. But for some reason, he just can't really stick with a team right now. I don't know if it's an attitude or something going on with Deontay Johnson, but he was one of my most drafted players, and he just didn't pan out. We did have some nice hits, though. Guys like Jackson Smith and the Jigba, guys like Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. We had a lot of good hits over there. But you can see the big one, DraftKings, was probably my best win in best ball history, in the last 5 to 10 years that I've been playing best ball. I only played $165 worth, but you can see I won over $4,000 here. I had one of my 11 teams make it to the final weekend. It was a round of 45 teams, and we took 15th place. So it was a very, very profitable DraftKings season. I do want to play more drafters, so I think more balance between these sites here. I'm sorry if you guys are underdog people. I'm not a very big underdog fan. I don't like really half PPR leagues. And for some reason, I just don't like the app. I don't really like the user interface. Underdog is pretty cutthroat too. I ended up losing some money on Underdog. So overall, we played $560. We won $256. We lost about $244 on Underdog. But overall, man, profitable season. DraftKings really came through for us. So I will be putting out more best ball content when it comes time, when the best balls fire up for 2025. There is usually some early best ball drafts before the NFL draft. Even they're going to put out a best ball contest, so we'll check that out. So stay tuned for best ball content. And good evening, Sport Dog. We didn't take home any money. We had a very nice season for the first time on an ESPN league. My son got me to join. It was a standard league where you have a 2025 draft guide available. Well, congrats, man. I still like ESPN. That's my go-to site. And maybe I'm old school. My league's been playing on there for 15 years now. And I can't stand Sleeper. I know that's probably the hot go-to fantasy football app, but I for some reason I despise it. I don't like my leagues that are on Sleeper. So I'm forever ESPN. I know there's some issues still with the site, and they need a better dynasty format. They are the perfect redraft hosting site, though, in my opinion. So glad you were able to enjoy it. And we'll have a 2025 draft guide available. You bet you I will be doing so. Last year, I'm going to go back to the members content here. I'm going to be putting out a bunch of rankings and things like that. I haven't really formulated any rankings yet. I'm waiting for more news on who's going to be at the combine, because once I get the NFL combine list, and I think that's the first week of February, that's when I start to make my rankings. I'm not going to make any rankings until I know who's all going to be there. So I will have rookie rankings for 2025. And then what I did last year is I put together this awesome 2024 Dynasty rookie guide. And this had like every stat in it. And basically I'm pulling a lot of stats from PFF, and I'm kind of just compiling them into different ways of looking at the data and seeing who sticks out. But this had everything in it last year. This had my pre-draft positional rankings and a lot of next-gen stats data. And then what I would do is I would take this year's, so 2024 draft class, I would take their data and compare it against like the last 3 or 4 classes. So I have a huge draft guide that I'm going to start working on. I got to start formatting and getting some things ready. So there will be a 2025 draft guide available on the fantasyfellowship.com. And again, once that NFL combine list comes out as who's going to be there, that's when I can start to make some rankings and have some fun with some 2025 content. So for the rest of January, though, I'm going to continue putting out some weekly rankings. I thought we should maybe take a look at the NFL playoff bracket. And I looked online here. I want a bracket where I can just click the teams that I want to win and kind of go from there. So I still can't find one. I guess this will have to do. We'll just kind of pull this open here and let's talk about how this Super Bowl run is going to go. We'll start in the AFC here. I really like this Chargers Houston Texans matchup. Texans, they don't have the firepower that they had last year. They're down Diggs. They're down Tank Dell. Joe Mixon kind of cooled off at the end of the year. I think the Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. Let me pull this up here. Yeah, the Chargers -3 at Houston, 42.5 implied. This is the first game on Saturday here. So I'm going to pick the Chargers here to move on and play Kansas City probably. Steelers, Ravens, I think it's hard for me to see the Steelers outclassing the Ravens here. It's totally possible. They're going to have to play a perfect game offensively. No turnovers, have to be really efficient and limit Lamar's big plays. We do have to watch the health of Zay Flowers, though. But for now, I'm going to take the Ravens to move into here. And as good of a story as it's been for the 2024 Denver Broncos, I think traveling to Buffalo is going to be a bit much for Bo Nix. So I think it's going to be Buffalo versus Baltimore, and you're going to get the Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll go to the other side here, and then we'll pick those divisional round games. Vikings, Rams. This one kind of surprised me. The Rams, they're a good team. The Vikings are only 1.5-point favorites as the 5 seed at number 4 LA Rams. The Vikings coming off a really bad loss last night. It didn't look pretty. The Rams are going to be rested. They got a full week of rest here. So I think this is a tough game for Minnesota. I'm going to lean Minnesota here, but I totally wouldn't be surprised if the Rams come through and upset the Vikings. Commanders at Tampa Bay. This one surprised me too. The Commanders are 3-point dogs as the number 5 seed. I think they're the 6 traveling to the 3. Tampa Bay is the 3. So Tampa Bay, they've had a great season. This game could go either way. These two teams played back, I think, in week 1, and Tampa Bay clubbed them. But I think Jaden Daniels comes in hot. They stay hot. They've been playing good football for the last month or so. I'm going to take Washington over Tampa Bay. I like Tampa Bay, but man, like Baker Mayfield just somehow keeps finding ways to get it done, and they kick the shit out of really bad teams. But I think the Commanders will come in and win that game. And then Philadelphia at my Green Bay Packers. It was a tough last couple of weeks for a Packer fan, just losing to Minnesota the way they did, just getting kind of embarrassed in both games, really. There's a little bit of an excuse there. Jordan Love and some of the starters didn't really play most of the game yesterday anyways, but it's an embarrassing kind of end of the season for the Packers. And they get the Eagles at Philadelphia. We started the season on that Friday night game with the Packers and Eagles, and it was a great game. I do think that the Packers are a much different team than that week one matchup. They were kind of a passing team, and Jacobs was just kind of there to sprinkle in and keep the defense honest. But now it's fully a Josh Jacobs team. I think the Packers are a good team, not a great team. Eagles are a great team defensively right now. And we'll see if Jalen Hurts, if he comes out rusty, maybe a turnover or two, I can see the Packers maybe sneaking one out here. But we got to put the Eagles into round two. Go back to the AFC here. We have the Chargers here versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs just don't impress me, man. The Chargers have been playing good football for a while now. The offense is starting to look good throwing the ball. J.K. Dobbins is healthy. I'm going to take the Chiefs down here at Arrowhead. Even though they're getting healthy, man, they have Marquise Brown back. Xavier Worthy's starting to step up. DeAndre Hopkins is still there, but Travis Kelce just is not himself. I don't really know if the Chiefs have a run game right now. I think the Chargers are going to upset the Chiefs here into the AFC Championship round. And then Ravens, Bills, the MVP battle here, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I don't know who I'm going to pick here because this game's going to be in Buffalo. And just these are the two, I think these are the two best teams in the AFC. This is the true AFC Championship right here. If I could flip a coin, I probably would still get this game wrong. I'm going to go Buffalo. Buffalo is due for some success here. So we have Buffalo Chargers for the AFC Championship. On the NFC side, we're going to have Philadelphia versus the Commanders and the Lions versus the Vikings. I'm going to move the Lions in. They just kicked the shit out of the Vikings. Well, you're going to move the Lions in one more game here. That game's in Detroit. Makes a lot of sense. Commanders, Eagles. The Commanders did beat them a few weeks back, but I think that was the game Jalen Hurts got a concussion. I'm going to push the Eagles into the NFC Championship. So we got Detroit, Philly, and then we're going to have the Chargers, Buffalo Bills. We'll go Buffalo versus Detroit, and I think Buffalo takes it home. I think the Buffalo Bills will win the Super Bowl this year, but there's like 4 or 5 teams that can win it this year. I think it's a really fun playoff bracket finally with the Chiefs finally not the favorite. I expect the Packers to be one and done. They looked really bad in the last 6 games, and Love has just impressed me. So I would be surprised if they draft a QB, my man. There's a couple things this year. The main thing that's most evident in just back in August when, Packer fans were like, hey, we have a great group of receivers. We have an okay group of receivers. We don't have an alpha. We don't have a guy that can go out and catch 100 passes in a season. And that was part of the reason why the offense just didn't look good. I think Jordan Love, when I was looking at the stats, he was like QB 17 after the bye week from weeks 11 through 17. The Packers just didn't have much of a passing game threat. They put all of their identity into Josh Jacobs, and that just seemed to be the way that they wanted to win the game. They wanted to run the ball, they wanted to throw, but the issue was they just weren't efficient. Like anytime you get the Packers in the 3rd and 7, like we don't feel good about it because we don't know who's going to get the ball. Don't really have that go-to guy that's going to get open every play. So to me, I would be totally shocked if they get a QB. I mean, they just paid Jordan Love a ton of money, and I think just with the knee issues and a lot of things this year, just the Packers need an overhaul at wide receiver. And Christian Watson, I believe, tore his ACL. He's going to be out for the year. So I'm pushing receiver up the Packers board. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be surprised if the Packers took one in the 1st round, but I think they're going to try and get an alpha receiver in the 2nd or 3rd. And who knows, maybe they even trade for somebody. Don't know if we can pay for a receiver, but I think a lot of the Love stuff, he did struggle, and he didn't run. He really couldn't run all season just with the knee injury and a couple other things. I'm willing to give him another season because, man, when he was on his run last year, he was playing like one of the best QBs in the league. And just a lot of the numbers fell off because Josh Jacobs was just running in for touchdowns, which we really haven't seen that from Green Bay. over the last few years, a running back that is the identity of the team. So I expect Green Bay to lose. I do think that they have a chance to win the game, but that's going to require them to play turnover-free football, and they're going to have to force some turnovers from Jalen Hurts. And yeah, I think Bills Eagles is a good call. Those, to me, it's Bills, Ravens, Eagles, Lions. Those are the only 4 teams that I want to see some combination of in the in the big Super Bowl here. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun weekend, wild card weekend. I don't know if there's going to be any crazy upsets, but we're set for a good season. And I just want to say thank you guys again. I'm not sure when my next video is going to be. I might put something out on Thursday night or something. I'm still not 100% sure how I want to operate this off season, but just keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up on the Fantasy Fellowship. It's take a break, guys. We've had a long 17, 18 week run, fantasy football, grinding the waivers. I turned all my notifications off. I'm not looking at things. Enjoy this lovely cold weather part of the season and get ready for some real football that matters. So thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you soon. Peace. Got me feeling icy.